There's a night when the moon disappears. No light, no shape, just an empty space in the sky. And yet, that's when it begins. Across cultures and centuries, this moment has been marked by silence, rituals, and reverence. Not for what is seen, but for what hides in the dark. It's called the dark moon, the new moon. But for the ancients, it was more than an astronomical phase. It was a doorway, a time to bury the old, to confront shadows, to plant what only grows in darkness. In this video, we'll uncover the forgotten power of the dark moon. We'll explore how ancient civilizations honored this invisible force with rites of death and renewal. We'll dive into the myths, the symbols, the gods and goddesses of the lunar void, and why this mysterious night still holds meaning for the human soul, because something happens when the moon vanishes, not just in the sky, but within us. If you seek meaning in the shadows, the myths, and the unseen threads of existence, subscribe. This is Beyond Mythology. Long before astronomy gave names to lunar phases, the ancients watched the sky and felt its silence. When the moon vanished, it wasn't simply darkness, it was presence, a powerful, unseen force descending on the world. In Greek mythology, that force had a name: Hecate. She wasn't only a goddess of witchcraft, but of transitions, thresholds, and everything that lives in between. She ruled over crossroads, physical and spiritual, and was especially honored during the dark moon, when sight gave way to instinct. Offerings were left at night, in silence, at the edges of paths, where the known world begins to blur. But she wasn't alone. In ancient Egypt, the moon was embodied by Khonsu, a god of healing and time. His phases reflected the eternal cycle of decay and renewal, and the dark moon marked a pause in the cosmic breath, a still point in the rhythm of creation. In India, the dark moon is known as Amavasya, a sacred time for spiritual cleansing. It's seen not as emptiness, but as fertile stillness, a moment to honor the ancestors, release burdens, and quietly prepare for renewal. Even today, millions observe this phase with meditation, ritual baths, and silence. Further west, the Aztecs told of Coyolxauhqui, a moon goddess dismembered by her brother, the sun, a cosmic myth of sacrifice and rebirth. Though not tied directly to the dark moon, her story reflects the violence and renewal hidden within lunar cycles. She reminds us that transformation often demands a breaking apart. In indigenous traditions throughout the Americas, the dark moon was a time for dream work, for silence, for descent, a retreat inward, where the veil between worlds thinned and visions rose from places deeper than thought. What's remarkable is that cultures scattered across the world, with no contact between them, all recognized this same invisible moment as sacred. The dark moon wasn't seen as absence. It was a threshold, a gateway between the seen and the unseen, between the self we show and the self that waits beneath. It was the cosmic womb, a silent cradle where endings dissolve and beginnings are conceived. Not all darkness is empty. Some of it carries weight, memory, emotion, and truth we've buried along the way. In psychology, this space is known as the shadow, a term made famous by Carl Jung. It represents the parts of ourselves we hide, repress, or deny, not because they're evil, but because they don't fit the story we've been telling. The dark moon reflects this inner terrain. It's the moment in the lunar cycle when nothing is visible, no light, no reflection. Yet somehow that's when the deepest internal work begins. In ancient rituals, this phase marked a turning inward, a time to confront the unseen self. The myths spoke of gods descending into the underworld, not as punishment, but as initiation. Their journey into darkness was the path to transformation. One of the oldest descent myths comes from Suma. Inanna, goddess of love and fertility, enters the underworld. She sheds her titles, her clothes, her power, layer by layer, until she stands naked before her shadow. Only through death and rebirth can she return to the world above changed. This isn't just a myth, it's a map of the soul. In astrology, the new moon marks the start of a new cycle. It's when the sun and moon come together, not in brightness, but in obscurity, a symbolic meeting of ego and emotion, purpose and instinct. A quiet pause where intentions are planted beneath the surface. Every month this rhythm returns, not only in the sky but within us, a cycle of expression and retreat, clarity and confusion, emergence and withdrawal. And when we lose touch with it, we lose touch with something essential. The dark moon asks for honesty, to see the wounds we've dressed up, the fears we've disguised as logic, the emotions we've silenced for safety, because when the light disappears, we don't vanish, we become more real. This is why so many ancient rites happened in silence, in solitude, in shadow. They weren't avoiding the dark, they were listening to what it had to say. When the moon disappeared, ancient people didn't just observe the sky, they responded to it. The dark moon wasn't a passive pause, it was a threshold waiting to be crossed, a sacred space between endings and beginnings, and for thousands of years, that space was filled with ritual. In India, during Amavasya, people cleanse their bodies and minds. They bathe in sacred rivers, fast in silence, light lamps in honor of ancestors. It's a time to cut energetic ties, to mourn, to purge, to prepare. Answers aren't found in noise, they emerge through stillness. In Greece, devotees of Hecate left offerings at three-way crossroads during the dark moon. Food, wine, ashes, gifts for a goddess who walked with ghosts. It was a night for boundaries to blur, between this world and the next, between self and shadow. No prayers spoken aloud, just presence and the quiet weight of transition. In ancient Egypt, the absence of the moon marked a reset in the sacred calendar. Priests would retreat, rituals paused. The silence of the dark moon echoed the silence before creation, the void from which life first emerged. Among indigenous peoples of the Americas, the dark moon was a time for dream work, fasting, smoke, song. Women would often gather in moon lodges to bleed, rest, and reconnect with the lunar current. It was a time to return to the body, not to escape it. In Wiccan and modern pagan traditions, the new moon is still honored as a night of intention setting, a time to release what no longer serves and plant seeds for what's to come. It isn't only about manifesting, it's a time to listen deeply, because the soil of the soul only accepts seeds when it's been turned. Each culture had its own way, but what they all shared was the silence, the inwardness, the recognition that something powerful happens when we stop trying to shine and simply allow ourselves to dissolve. The dark moon wasn't feared, it was honored. As a teacher, a mirror, a threshold, a moment to touch the invisible and return changed. You won't often hear it called by name, but the dark moon lives everywhere in pop culture, in the silence before the transformation, in the fall before the rise. It's the phase where the hero disappears, so something deeper can emerge. In Batman Begins, Bruce Wayne doesn't become the Dark Knight by standing in the spotlight. He vanishes into fear, exile, and shadow. Only after losing everything does he forge a new identity in the dark. That arc, it's Luna. In Moana, the ocean chooses her, but she doesn't become a wayfinder until she breaks. After her lowest moment, when she believes the sea was wrong about her, she stands beneath a moonless sky and sings, alone. That's the turning point, a death of self-doubt and the rebirth of inner knowing. In Stranger Things, the Upside Down isn't just a horror trope, it's the literal shadow world, a twisted mirror where trauma hides, and it's no accident that Eleven, the one with the deepest psychic power, must descend into it to confront her past. She loses her abilities first, only then can she begin to reclaim who she really is. Even in Sailor Moon, the name says it all, the heroine's final transformations often come when she's lost everything, when she's alone, wounded, unsure. The power doesn't erupt from dominance, but from surrender, clarity, stillness. In Black Panther, T'Challa is cast down, defeated, dethroned, presumed dead. And where does he go? To the ancestral realm, a symbolic underworld. He speaks with those who came before, reconnects with his lineage, and returns reborn. It's not just a comeback, it's a resurrection. All these stories follow a pattern older than cinema. Descent, darkness, silence, then light. It's no different from the lunar cycle or the astrological new moon, when new intentions are sown invisibly beneath the surface. These aren't just stories, they're modern myths echoing ancient rhythms, and we're drawn to them because on some level we recognize the truth. Transformation doesn't start in the spotlight. It begins in the void, in the quiet, hidden space where something old fades and something new waits to be born. We often think of beginnings as bright moments, filled with clarity, confidence, light. But that's not how the ancients saw it. For them, the true beginning came in darkness. The dark moon wasn't a void to avoid. It was the initiation chamber of the soul. A space of stillness, yes, but also of confrontation. A symbolic death where illusions are stripped away and what's real begins to stir beneath the surface. This is why so many ancient rites aligned with the new moon, astrologically and ritually, not because it guaranteed success, but because it mirrored the descent that comes before growth. The seed doesn't sprout in daylight. It dissolves in darkness first. In myth, gods like Osiris, Inanna, and Dionysus don't rise until they've fallen. They face dismemberment, silence, exile, and only after surrendering to that stillness do they return transformed. Even Persephone's abduction to the underworld, often seen as a tragedy, was also an initiation. Her descent crowned her queen. Her darkness gave her power. Psychologically, the dark moon reflects what Jung called individuation, the slow, sacred process of becoming whole, not by chasing the light, but by integrating the shadow. The anger, fear, grief, not erased, but understood. And through that honesty, something shifts. In astrology, this phase isn't made for action. It's a time to withdraw and listen, to feel the pulse of something unspoken. The sun and moon align, not in radiance, but in shadow. It's a fusion of ego and instinct, purpose and emotion. And in that hidden moment, a seed is planted. We forget how powerful silence can be. Not absence, but presence, the kind of presence that sees through the masks we wear. The world tells us to be seen, to shine, to perform, but the dark moon teaches something older, to pause, to let go, to trust that renewal doesn't begin when you rise. It begins when you're willing to fall, because there is wisdom in that fall, in that empty sky. And sometimes the most powerful things you'll ever grow will be planted in a night with no moon. We spend so much of life chasing light, chasing answers, progress, clarity, but the ancients knew some truths are only born in the dark. The dark moon isn't a moment to fear. It's a sacred pause, a space where noise fades and something deeper can speak, not to tell you what to do, but to remind you of what you are. In Vedic tradition, this night is called Amavasya, a time when the world goes quiet and the soul listens. Month after month, it returns like a whisper. And this very week, it arrives again. So maybe, don't fill the silence. Feel it. Don't rush the cycle, trust it. Let something fall away. Let something go unseen. Because the dark doesn't take, it prepares. It prepares you for the version of yourself that can only be born after you've let the old one die. So, what part of you needs to die for something true to finally take root? If that stirred something in you, share it in the comments. What does the dark moon teach you? And if you want to keep exploring the symbols, the myths, and the mysteries we carry in silence, subscribe. This is Beyond Mythology.